Morning, folks, and welcome to Power to Negotiate. My name is Reed. Today I'd like to talk about an interesting technique that I call the risk avoidance technique. And you're going to say, Reed, what are you talking about? There's always risk in real estate. Yes, there is, unless you use a technique to transfer all the risk to someone else. Let me explain. Let's assume that there's a $100,000 house out here. It's worth $100,000, and you negotiate to get the property under contract for, let's say, $90,000. So you had the property under contract on a lease option for $90,000, with the purchase price being the declining mortgage balance, and you're going to have the length of the option be the length of the mortgage term. So maybe it's 25 years before you have to execute that option, or you walk away. What risk do you have there? You didn't put any money down for down payment. You have the seller making the first 3 months of payments. You're going to find a tenant buyer. If you know what the market rent is, and the mortgage and the taxes and the insurance are less than the market rent, what risk do you have there? Do you see how by structuring this deal correctly, you don't really have any risk? Yes, you do have a risk. Maybe you had to make 1 month's payment. But your job is to find out what the property is worth. Let's approach it a slightly different way. Let's say we wanted to have no risk. Could we structure this deal so that we do a lease option, the seller's going to pay the first 3 months of payments, and we're going to work our hearts off trying to find a tenant buyer. The seller's still going to have titles to the property, and at the end of that 3 months, if we don't have anybody, the seller still holds the house. Now, what's in it for the seller? That's the first question I always ask. What's in it for them? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you've tried to sell this property. You haven't found anybody. Is that correct? Okay. How would you like to still hold title to the property, and I'm going to work my tail off to try to get somebody in there. In the meantime, you keep on trying to sell. Now, if I find somebody that wants to lease option this property before you get someone in here, I'd like to have the right to go ahead and exercise that option. Is that fair? But in the meantime, you just have someone else that's using their money to try to take care of your property. Would that make sense? If they say yes, great. Now, you're going to say, well, Reed, why wouldn't someone just buy from the seller? What do the sellers want to do? They want to sell the property. What are you selling? You're doing a lease option on that same property. So you're looking at two totally different markets. They're trying to sell this property, let's say for $100,000, and you're trying to put a tenant buyer in there that has no credit. Or do you have two totally separate audiences? Yes, you do. And so that's one way of doing this, that you have zero risk. Let me back up. You do have some risk. You have your time, you have your cost for placing ads in the newspaper or for placing ads in Craigslist, but if you put in Craigslist, there's no cost. And you have your time and effort for going out there and showing the property to people and for answering the phone. But if you're saying, Reed, I want to get into properties and have no risk, this is a technique that will allow you to get into the properties with zero risk. Let me just summarize. The way to do this is, it's a lease option. I'm going to have the seller pay the first 3 months of payments. And the agreement is that I have the right to lease option that property if I can find someone in that 3 months. If at the end of those 3 months I can't find someone, the lease option expires. And guess what? I don't have to make any payments. However, if I do find someone, I execute the lease option, the right to go ahead and lease it with the option to purchase, and we move forward. At the same time, the seller has the right to try to sell it, but not the right to lease option it. Would that be another tool in your tool belt that might help?